Are the poor only good enough for standing room? Haha. Well, then I'm leaving. I'm Chloe Harris. I lost my husband to illness at an early age and have since been living with my daughter Stephanie, working together as a family. I've worked hard to raise Stephanie. I think I might have made her feel lonely at times because of that. But Stephanie has been blessed with a good relationship, and now she's dating a fine young man named Ken. When Stephanie and Ken started living together, I expanded my job scope and now work in various places. Hello, Stephanie? It's Mom. How are you doing? Yeah. I'm good. Ken's fine too. That's good to hear. Oh, by the way, I was on a business trip recently and wanted to drop off a souvenir this weekend. Will you be home? Thanks. But this weekend? It might be tough. Can I come by on a weekday evening to pick it up? I felt a slight unease in Stephanie's hesitant response. But I didn't pry too deeply, thinking she might just be busy. Little did I know, I would come to regret not asking more at that moment. We planned to meet the following Wednesday, and I invited Ken as well for a dinner together, to which they happily agreed. It had been a while since I last saw Stephanie due to my travel schedule. I was looking forward to seeing Stephanie and Ken that Wednesday. On the promised Wednesday evening. Mom! I'm home. Good evening. Thank you for inviting me as well today. Good evening. Welcome, both of you. Dinner's ready. Stephanie's hair had grown longer since I last saw her, and Ken's had gotten shorter. Just a change in hairstyle can alter the atmosphere so much, I thought. Anyway, I was relieved to see them both looking well. I quickly reheated the dinner I had prepared and set the table. They offered to help, but I declined, knowing they had driven an hour to get here and must be tired. Meals, often eaten alone, felt more delicious with 3 people at the table. It reminded me how enjoyable it is to cook for loved ones. How have you two been? Enjoying yourselves? As I asked, they looked at each other and laughed. Yes. Every day is fun. Yes. I've been having a great time, though I rely a lot on Stephanie. Seeing my child talk so happily always brings me peace. As we shared updates on work and home life, I felt content. Responsible Stephanie and kind, cheerful Ken. Ken seemed a bit henpecked, but maybe that's just the right balance. My only wish was for Stephanie, who lost her father early and experienced loneliness, to be happy. The day we reunited flew by, and they left before midnight. After some time, I received a call from Stephanie. Hello, Stephanie? What's up? Mom, well, it's nothing, never mind. Stephanie sounded off and was about to hang up. But I was concerned and stopped her. Wait, Stephanie. Something's wrong, isn't it? Please tell me. Mom, yeah. Thank you. Can I come over next weekend? Of course, dear. I'll be waiting. I hung up the phone and found myself anxiously waiting for the weekend. I thought about calling a few times, but I assumed Stephanie probably wanted to talk in person, which is why she had mentioned coming over to the house. I decided to simply wait for the weekend. Finally, the weekend arrived, and Stephanie came over. I made some coffee and handed it to her. But Stephanie just stared at the coffee, not drinking it. It seemed like she was deep in thought, so I asked her. Stephanie, are you okay? She seemed startled by my voice and gave a wry smile. Then hesitantly started talking. I don't want Ken to know this, but it seems like Ken's mom doesn't like me. She's told me to break up with him. What? I didn't know Ken's mom well, as she only occasionally came up in our conversations. But if she's saying to break up, there must be a reason. Did she tell you why? Well, don't be shocked, Mom. When I told her we were a single-parent family, that seemed to bother her. For real? That's the reason? A girl raised in a single-parent home is only not good, she said. She can't let Ken be with someone like that. I couldn't believe such an unreasonable reason could exist. How could she say such things and hurt Stephanie? I just couldn't understand. Really, in this day and age, there are still people with such prejudices. Yeah. I told her dad passed away from illness, but she still didn't care. Seeing Stephanie trying to smile through it hurt me. Stephanie and I had gone through tough times after losing her father. We've overcome so much and have nothing to be ashamed of. I want to help her, but is there a solution? And I didn't want to tell you like this, but Ken proposed to me recently. Oh my! Really? I was so happy, of course. But thinking of Ken's mom, I'm not sure what to do. I see. Marriage is about joining families, after all. Of course, I'm happy about Stephanie and Ken's marriage. But after hearing Stephanie's story, I can understand her dilemma. She added that Ken's mom usually visits on weekends, and she seems nice when Ken is around. However, Stephanie said that Ken's mom's attitude changes completely when Ken is not around due to working on weekends. Sensing there was more to the story, I encouraged her to tell me everything. She sighed and shared a shocking account of mistreatment. She said Ken's mom would throw away the food Stephanie cooked, criticize her cleaning and laundry methods, and even told her not to burden Ken with living expenses. Despite them sharing the costs since Stephanie also works. That's terrible. I don't want to speak ill of Ken's mom, but well, I'm not the best cook and can't always keep the house perfect while working. Maybe it's my fault. Ahaha. Stephanie forced a laugh but seemed close to tears. I was angry but held it back. I suggested telling Ken, but she didn't want to worry him. After talking for a while and feeling better, Stephanie got ready to leave. I handed her something. Take this with you, just in case. This is a voice recorder? I explained it's to keep evidence, just in case. I hoped she wouldn't have to use it, but it's better to have evidence. I always carry a voice recorder for work. And gave it to Stephanie. She understood and put it in her bag. Call me if anything happens. Sure, Mom. Thanks. Then, Stephanie left. Later, she called to ask if she and Ken could come over. I guessed they might have decided to get married. When they arrived, Ken, in a suit, was incredibly nervous. I couldn't help but laugh. I served cake and coffee, and as we sat down, Ken nervously announced their engagement. We all laughed, which seemed to relax him. After that, we discussed future plans, including setting a date for a family meeting and proceeding with wedding arrangements. The word family meeting made me glance at Stephanie, who smiled awkwardly. From observing Ken's behavior, it appears he was indeed unaware of his mother-in-law's actions, and he was talking very happily. When I told Ken and Stephanie that I wanted to help as much as possible and they should consult me with anything, they both happily expressed their gratitude. When Stephanie called later about the family meeting, I answered, expecting it to be about the schedule. She sounded downhearted, so I asked what was wrong. Then, I heard an unexpected story. Stephanie. What's up? You don't sound well. Mom, it's hard to say, the family meeting might not happen. Oh? What happened? I was surprised but remembered the earlier conversations about Ken's mother. Could it be? Ken's parents are against the marriage? It seems so. Ahaha. Stephanie's forced laughter was evident even over the phone. It seems they are particularly displeased with Stephanie. As can be inferred from previous discussions, being from a single-parent household likely played a role in the situation. Did you get the real reason why? Yeah, because we're a single-parent family. I see, as I thought. I couldn't understand why being from a single-parent family would be so abhorred. When I asked if this would break the marriage, Stephanie said Ken was furious when he heard why the family meeting wasn't happening. He was so outraged that he said he'd cut ties with his parents if they held such prejudices. Ken's parents, panicked, agreed to the marriage but still refused the family meeting. Stephanie had never seen Ken so angry and had to calm him down. They eventually decided to forego the family meeting after a long discussion. I'm sorry, Mom. I even thought we should reconsider the timing of the wedding because of their opposition. Don't be silly. Don't worry about the family meeting. What matters most in a marriage is you and Ken's feelings. You're both adults. I shared my thoughts with her. I felt sorry for Stephanie, but I was relieved to know Ken was on her side. Ken said the same. He couldn't understand his parents' stance. After all, it's us who are getting married, right? Hearing this, I felt relieved that Stephanie's partner was someone like Ken. They decided to have a wedding, and will greet Ken's parents there. Honestly, I was worried about Stephanie's future, but she's an adult, so I didn't want to interfere too much. Later, they told me about their honeymoon plans and their search for the perfect wedding venue. The next day, I got a rare call from Ken. Hello, Ken? What's up? Hi, Mom. I guess Stephanie told you about the recent situation. Yes, she did. Sounds like it was tough. I'm really sorry. I never imagined my own parents would have such prejudices. Ken seemed shocked by his parents' behavior. He likely never imagined such an issue would arise from his own parents. As a parent myself, I was infuriated that they would say such things to their child. Ken, who contacted me to apologize for hurting Stephanie, clearly cares deeply for her. And he repeatedly apologized to me as well, expressing his remorse. You don't need to apologize, Ken. I'm just glad someone like you, who puts Stephanie first, is her partner. Ken thanked me, his voice shaking. I believe getting rid of prejudices is hard. So I hope they become a happy couple, making his parents regret their biases in a good way. After talking for a while, I started thinking about what I could do for them. And I decided to prepare a surprise gift. Time passed, and tomorrow is their wedding day. Despite some small issues, Ken seems to have protected Stephanie well, and we're ready for tomorrow. I pulled out an album from the closet, looking at photos of Stephanie as a baby. With her father, and after we became just the two of us. Tears came to my eyes as I remembered those times. Darling, our Stephanie is getting married tomorrow. She's met a wonderful man, somewhat like you. Please watch over her to ensure the wedding goes well. I spoke to my late husband's picture. Though no reply came, somehow, it felt like he was smiling. Then came the long-awaited wedding day. I finished getting ready and left the house. Not being the main character, yet I realized I was a bit nervous and chuckled to myself. Arriving at the venue, I went to find Stephanie, who seemed to be in the middle of preparations. When I called out to her, she turned around. Her face was pale. What's wrong? You're so pale. Yeah, just too nervous. Am I going to be okay? She seemed to have lost color due to excessive nervousness. Relieved, I patted her back. It's okay. Your dad and I are watching over you, and more importantly, you have your chosen husband here. Stephanie took a deep breath and seemed a bit calmer. Thanking me, she continued with the staff's help. Watching her, I also felt the reality of the situation. Then, I went to greet Ken's parents. In Ken's dressing room, only Ken and some staff were present, his parents having left a bit earlier. I approached Ken. Hello, Ken. It's finally happening, isn't it? Turning to me, Ken looked as pale as Stephanie, clearly nervous. I couldn't help but laugh, which seemed to make him even more flustered. Sorry, Mother. I'm surprisingly nervous. Ahaha. It's fine, it's fine. It's quite like you too. Sorry. What are you apologizing for? You're funny. I was reminded of my own wedding. My husband and I were also very nervous, and the staff had to calm us down. It's sweet how similar they are. After greeting Ken, I tried to find his parents but couldn't. I decided to greet them during a break in the ceremony. As the ceremony started, I walked the aisle with Stephanie, in place of her father. Barely starting, I was overwhelmed with emotion, on the verge of tears. Walking slowly, I handed Stephanie's hand to Ken. Watching them smile at each other, I felt a mix of happiness and sadness. After the ceremony, moving to the reception, I finally found Ken's father. Excuse me, are you Ken's father? Yes, and you are? I'm Stephanie's mother. Excuse me for the late introduction. Congratulations on this special day. Please take good care of Stephanie from now on. After I held out my hand as a greeting, there was a brief pause. I looked up, puzzled, and received an unpleasant response. So you're the bride's mother, huh? As I looked up, I could see clear disgust on the father-in-law's face, and I felt a sense of as expected. I'll take my leave then. Deciding it was wise not to engage further, I quickly moved away after the greeting. Stephanie's mother-in-law was not present, so I hadn't met her yet, but I planned to look for another opportunity later. Could you be Mrs. Harris by any chance? On my way to the reception hall, a man approached and I stopped. Yes, that's me. His face brightened instantly as I confirmed. I knew it. It's me, Brown. Don't you remember? Mr. Brown? Of course, I remember you. But why are you here? I had met Mr. Brown only once before through work. He was a young but very capable man. I'm Ken's cousin. Are you related to the bride? That's right. Stephanie, the bride, is my daughter. Thank you for being here today. What a coincidence. Congratulations on your daughter's wedding. After a brief chat with Mr. Brown, I continued towards the reception hall. Upon entering, I parted ways with Mr. Brown and looked for my seat, but couldn't find my name anywhere. When I asked a staff member, they were surprised and rushed off to check. Noticing my confusion, the father-in-law approached me with a smirk. What's wrong? Oh, I can't seem to find my seat. He burst into laughter at my response. His laugh was so unpleasant, furthermore, he began speaking loudly enough for others to hear. Poor people like you should be fine with standing room, right? What? I asked back, surprised by his words. A single mother trying to sit down like she's somebody. You're just here for a free meal, aren't you? Haha. What did you just say? Can't even understand, huh? Truly hopeless. Leave right now. His extremely offensive words made it impossible for me to hide my anger. A mother who hurt Stephanie and a father who looks down on us for being a single-parent family. I couldn't fathom how such parents raised a good son like Ken. Then I will leave. Oh? Obedient, aren't you? Hit a nerve and can't talk back, huh? Ignoring his remarks, I left the reception hall. However, I was really looking forward to Stephanie and Ken's wedding, so I was internally debating what to do. After stepping out of the reception hall, I thought that if I were to leave, I should at least explain the situation to Stephanie and Ken. It was their important wedding day. If I told them, Stephanie would be upset, and Ken would likely feel guilty and apologize. Should I really insert my adult problems into what should be a day full of happiness? Maybe it would be best if I just endured it. I was at a loss. Then Mr. Brown approached me. Mrs. Harris, are you okay? I saw everything that happened. I'm sorry I couldn't help. There's nothing for you to apologize for, Mr. Brown. Thank you for your concern. Then, Mr. Brown made a suggestion. There's no need for you to leave, Mrs. Harris. I have a good idea. He said this with a reassuring smile. Mr. Brown called over a staff member, explained the situation, and the staff member gladly accepted his proposal. Mr. Brown, thank you so much. No need to thank me. The real problem is clearly the groom's father. After thanking Mr. Brown again, I was escorted by a staff member to a new location. On the way, I stopped by the restroom, where I encountered someone unexpected. Could it be Mrs. Chloe Harris? Yes, that's me, and you are? I'm your biggest fan. I'm so thrilled to meet you here. I rarely appear in the media, only once in a magazine, so knowing my face meant she must be a considerable fan. Oh, I'm the groom's mother. It's the best day ever to meet Mrs. Harris. It was the mother-in-law. She was much more high-spirited than the impression I got from Stephanie. That's right. Congratulations on today. Thank you. Could I shake your hand? Yes. I hesitantly agreed to the handshake and quickly left the restroom. I never expected to meet her this way. Nor that she would know me. The staff member led me to the second floor of the reception hall. It's not usually used, but Mr. Brown had arranged this seat for me because of the situation. From here, I could overlook the reception hall and see Stephanie and Ken's happy moment. It seemed the guests downstairs hadn't noticed me, and I could clearly see the father-in-law. After a while, the high-spirited mother-in-law took her seat and seemed to be talking to the father-in-law about earlier events. Sighing, I watched them as the venue dimmed and the reception began under the host's lead. Stephanie and Ken's entrance was so lovely it brought tears to my eyes. How had they grown up so fast? Watching them walk shyly amidst blessings was unforgettable. Then, Stephanie and Ken looked up and smiled at me. It seems they heard that I was here. I waved at them, capturing their photos on my smartphone. Next, it was time for the letter of appreciation to the parents. The father-in-law and mother-in-law smirked at Stephanie. Noticing this, Stephanie looked down just as I was invited onto the stage, causing the father-in-law to grimace and the mother-in-law to turn pale. She pointed at me, trembling, saying, What? I nodded, took the letter from Stephanie, and read it. By the end, Stephanie, Ken, and surprisingly, even I were in tears. We received a round of applause, and I descended the stage after receiving the letter and a bouquet from Stephanie. Back on the second floor, I could see the father-in-law and mother-in-law whispering. I could imagine they talked about me. Mr. Brown nodded and gave me a thumbs up, which made me smile. I knew I owed him a big thank you someday. After the reception, I went to meet Stephanie, where I found her with her parents-in-law. I approached them coldly, thinking they wanted something from Stephanie. Do you need something from Stephanie? No. We wanted to talk to you, Mrs. Harris. What about? See. This is what I'm talking about. Why should I apologize? Please. She's an important person. Apologize. No need for apologies. And what are you apologizing for? The mother-in-law, still pale, hurriedly bowed. My husband was very rude to you. I'm so sorry. Please forgive us. What rudeness are you referring to? About calling you poor and suggesting you should stand. I'm so sorry. However, who I am wasn't the point. Never would I have imagined that you, of all people, are Stephanie's mother. If only we had known, things wouldn't have come to this. You refused to meet me because I'm Stephanie's mother. Well. When I brought up the issue of the initial family meeting, the mother-in-law suddenly fell silent. She only seemed to be apologizing for the father-in-law's behavior, but to me, she was just as culpable. I certainly didn't have a good impression of this couple. They continued to insist that they were not at fault for refusing the family meeting, claiming they would have been happy to have it if they had known who I was, and suggesting it was Stephanie's fault for not telling them beforehand. However, I firmly stated that part of the importance of a family meeting is getting to know the other party and that they were the ones who made assumptions based on our family background. This only reinforced my belief that we had fundamentally different values. Angered by my retort, the father-in-law spoke up next. Famous, huh? Doesn't look like it. Maybe she just shares the same name? Besides, she's just a poor single mother. Oh, what do you mean by that? Mr. Brown interjected at that moment. As soon as looking at him, my father-in-law was surprised. Vice President? Yes, Mr. Brown was the vice president of the company where the father-in-law worked. The current president was Mr. Brown's father, and it seemed he was set to take over the company. Mr. Brown was Ken's cousin, but his father had married into the family, taking his wife's surname. Who are you referring to as a poor single mother? Well, she's... Are you talking about Mrs. Harris? That would be a grave mistake, wouldn't it? A grave mistake? It seems you're not aware. Mrs. Harris here is a world-famous artist. Well, I heard that from my wife, but just a painter, right? Still poor. Ignorance is frightening, isn't it? Mrs. Harris's paintings sell for millions at the lowest. What? The father-in-law was stunned. And the mother-in-law shrank beside him, unable to hide her disturbance. Watching their behavior, I couldn't help but let out another sigh. As an artist, I create my own works and also accept commissions. Many people appreciate my art and buy it at high prices. Mr. Brown is also one of those connected to this, with his parents primarily being the ones who have taken a liking to my paintings and purchased them. Mr. Brown has been the intermediary in this matter, handling the transactions with my manager, and I have met him once during these dealings. No way! Ask my parents if you don't believe it. They've bought paintings for up to $2 million. $2 million? Oh, that auction was quite an event. My parents really wanted your painting, so we ended up bidding high in an auction-style format. We won, thankfully. With a smile, Mr. Brown looked at me. I put my hand on my chest in gratitude and was thanked in return. The father-in-law and mother-in-law were both ashen-faced and bowed. If my parents find out you insulted Mrs. Harris, they'll be deeply saddened. With that, the father-in-law looked up, sweating. And he begged Mr. Brown, please don't tell them. I beg you. Mr. Brown was visibly frustrated by their behavior and urged them to beg forgiveness from the right person. Reluctantly, the father-in-law turned to me and began a half-hearted apology. Clearly lacking sincerity due to their pride. He didn't seem to understand what truly upset me the most. Do you know what I'm most angry about? What? That I look down on you? He clearly didn't get it. I asked the same question to the mother-in-law, but she seemed just as clueless. It's because you hurt someone very important to me. Even with that, both seemed bewildered and didn't understand. Lacking comprehension and learning ability, perhaps. I'm angry because you hurt Stephanie. I raised my voice in frustration, feeling angrier than I had in a long time. They seemed to get it, but still refused to sincerely apologize to Stephanie due to their pride. Stephanie also had faults. We thought she was poor because she's from a single-parent household. It was clear they were trying to shift the blame to Stephanie, claiming it was Stephanie's responsibility to explain things to us. Mr. Brown looked exasperated, while Stephanie was visibly upset. At that moment, Ken stepped in. Stephanie, keep an eye on these people, he said, standing by her and putting an arm around her shoulders. Let's make sure we don't end up like them, he added, clearly angry after hearing the conversation. His actions calmed my rage. What kind of attitude is that towards your parents? Yeah, Ken. Behave modestly. No thanks. If you keep hurting my important person, I'll cut ties with you. What? Everyone present was surprised by Ken's statement, but inwardly, I was thinking, well said, and commended him. Mr. Brown seemed pleased, too. I'm grateful to you for raising me, but I'm building a new family with Stephanie. That's my happiness, so if you interfere, I don't want any part of it. Stephanie looked relieved by Ken's support, and her worried expression faded. Seeing this side of Ken, I felt even more supportive of their union. The parents-in-law were silenced by Ken's words. The groom's so cool. Stephanie, he may be like this, but take care of him. Of course. And you too. Like this, huh? The tension eased a bit. And I was happy to see that they could overcome challenges together. Arbitrary and prejudiced actions never lead to anything good, I said to the disheartened pair, who flinched slightly and turned towards me. Being from a single-parent family doesn't necessarily mean being poor, nor does being poor justify contempt. A lack of compassion is a form of poverty too. They left the room without a word, looking frustrated. As a parent myself, I'm relieved I never adopted such a worldview. I owe my current self to Stephanie, and I need to thank her again. A few days later, my manager informed me that a man claiming to be a relative of mine had called, wanting to speak with me. A man claiming to be a relative of mine connected the call. Hello? Hey! I'm Ken's father. It was the father-in-law. He had searched for my office's contact details to reach me. Do you need something? Convince President Brown. I asked for details, and apparently, Mr. Brown had reported the wedding incident to his father, the company president, who was furious. The president was considering taking action against him since my office had a contract with their company and it could cause damage. I want you to ask them to not take any action. Why should I? That's your company's business, not mine. He continued with his condescending tone, which was unpleasant as usual. I realized people like him never change. We're in trouble because Ken hasn't contacted us since the wedding. That's the result of your own actions. What? Ken had apparently followed through on his words from the wedding and cut ties with his parents. It allows Stephanie to live without anxiety. Everything was their own doing, yet they were asking for my help, which was utterly inconvenient. To think you survived in society with such an attitude. There's a limit to looking down on people. I have no obligation to listen to you, and I don't care about your troubles. Damn it. I'm asking you, I'm bowing down here. I see you don't understand. Things will happen as they will. I'm busy, so I'll hang up now. Goodbye. Wait. I ended the call and informed my manager not to connect them anymore. Despite several attempts from them, my manager, who is more direct than me, eventually stopped their calls. I reported the incident to Stephanie and Ken and urged them to be cautious. After they couldn't reach me, the in-laws apparently went to Ken's company, which led to security intervention. Ken explained the situation to his company, which agreed to keep them away. Mr. Brown later contacted me, apologizing for involving me in the company's affairs. But I reassured him, confirming our contract would continue. Eventually, the father-in-law faced a demotion but chose to leave the company after disputing the decision. Since the wedding, the in-laws had a strained relationship, leading to divorce after the father-in-law became unemployed. The mother-in-law once sent an email to Ken, asking him to support her, but he ignored it. The father-in-law, with his high pride, struggled to find re-employment and was barely scraping by working at a part-time job. The mother-in-law, unable to find support from relatives due to the wedding incident, ended up living in a shabby apartment while working part-time jobs. As a celebration gift for Stephanie and Ken, I surprised them with a house. I remembered a house that Stephanie and Ken once said, "We'd like to live in," and had one built with a similar design for them. To ensure their living environment wouldn't change drastically, I had the house built close to where Stephanie and Ken are currently living. They were overjoyed with the gift, even suggesting that I live with them in my later years. I reported to my late husband's memorial that Stephanie and Ken were very happy, and placed a photo of the three of us at the altar. Next year, I'm also looking forward to the birth of a grandchild, adding more joy to my future.